Okay, well, let's start with a formal welcome to everybody who's here to talk about or listen to us talk about homeschooling in the early years. And we're going to have about 30 minutes of Wendy and I just chit-chatting. We're quite informal in the way we present. And then we hope to have a bit of time at the end for questions and answers. And then you can unmute yourself and actually physically ask the questions. And it's just a 40-minute session, but we might go longer if we can. We'll just see how things go. Do you want to kick off, Wendy?
Yes, quite happy to do that. Just probably say from my side, welcome, and it's lovely to have everybody eavesdropping on what Shirley and I enjoy doing, which is talking about homeschooling, and in particular getting those foundations in place with our children. So that we can do it for the long haul, that as we take a step, we get more confident about our next step, which is obviously high school. So that in mind, and also being mindful of the fact that we have a limited time period because Zoom cuts us off after 40 minutes because we have more than 3 people. If we haven't got to everybody's questions at the end, we can all log out and log back in with the same details and deal with any other questions. That's just a little bit of housekeeping. Yeah, so that's my thoughts for the start. And Shirley, you want to jump in with our first ideas?
Yes, well, one of the things that I believe quite strongly about is that with little children, they need a lot of time for pre-play.
Yeah.
Pre-play. So there's a catchy saying that says that play is the work of childhood. And they only have one childhood. So I just think, shame, we don't want to spoil it by burning them out with trying to make them start doing school in these precious early years when they actually should be free to just explore and be curious. And the reason that play is the work of childhood is that when children are making up their own games and exploring the world in their own way, they're actually doing a lot of thinking in the front part of the brain, which the frontal cortex, which is used later on when they do start doing more formal academics. So they're imagining things, they're creating rules in their games, whether they're even playing alone or with friends. But they're doing things and they're figuring things out that we don't probably even realize are beneficial for learning. And the other thing is that when you put children in a classroom situation or even a homeschool class situation and you're trying to do book work, you're actually focusing on fine motor skills. And at this early age, they need to be developing the gross motor skills. So it's the bigger muscles. They need to be climbing and crawling and riding bikes and scooters and doing things like that. Because when that system of muscles is well developed, then the fine motor skills apparently develop better and more easily. And so then they will have better control for writing and doing those other things that are required when you start doing academic things. So
do you want to just unshare your screen there, Shirley, so folks can actually see us chatting?
Okay.
And one of the now we can actually see who's also with us, which is great. One of the things that I always say to moms is that instead of investing in a pricey curriculum for these preschool years, to invest in a jungle gym. And I think that we had our jungle gym up until my children were in their early teens, and there would still be them climbing to the top of the platform with blankets and books and snacks so that they can have their reading alone time up, so it really is an investment that keeps on giving, from kids hanging upside down by their legs through all sorts of seasons of life. So if you're thinking about what to invest in, start with the jungle gym and a sand pit and some imaginary play boxes and just let them be. We've got a quote, but you actually did mention it, that play is the work of childhood by Maria Montessori. And to create those environments for them, I like to advise folks to have learning centers in their home. so that they have in their lounge big book baskets and comfy couches and blankets for the kids to snuggle up under and read books with you or on their own. Bedrooms are a perfect place for imaginary play, whether it's small little figurines or whether it is actually dress up. Kitchen is great for messy stuff like Play-Doh and painting and that sort of thing. And then obviously your outdoors is also an extension of their home. So that's their gross motor play.
And if you've got a small home, then you've got to just take them to a park if you can and go on outings and just get them out of doors where they can climb trees or climb the fence or climb the jungle gym or the slide or whatever it is that's in your community. It doesn't have to be in your backyard. Some of us don't have backyards. So
yeah, definitely
find a way to get your kids out and moving.
Yeah, for sure. And I think one of the other greatest investments are those little black motorbikes. Kids just absolutely love them. I mean, besides the terrible noise on the roads as they go, that's one of those childhood memories that you've got, is that sound of those kids going on those motorbikes. So really lots and lots of free time for play. And like we said, as Maria Montessori says, it is the work of childhood. Let's not diminish it into being something that is by this wayside. It's the work of what they must do. How would you say, Shirley, we can build a long-term love of learning in our children starting when they're little?
I think I always try to remember what I hated about school myself and then try and do the opposite. But in my experience, it's the fun things that we've enjoyed was when we just did things together and shared experiences. And obviously, I'm a believer in reading good books, so I like to read to my children a lot. And the idea is that by sharing good stories with your children, you're not only filling their minds with good ideas and interesting things, but you're creating in them a love of books so that they will actually want to learn to read and know that books and stories can be fun and interesting. And it's quite tricky in a digital world. I had an email recently from my mom saying she's feeling like she's failing because her children are just not interested in reading, even though she reads to them all the time. But it's so funny how we always think the grass is greener on the other side, and it should always be different to how we've got it. She's got kids that live in an estate, and so after school in the afternoons, her kids just want to get outside and ride bikes with their friends, and they're not interested in reading, and she's got a problem with that. And I haven't replied yet, but I just think what a wonderful problem to have, that your children are in a space where they can get out and it's safe and they can ride with their friends and just enjoy that freedom. So don't stress over this reading thing. I mean, I've got 6 children, and the oldest and the youngest are absolute bookworms, and the others will read if they must, but they do enjoy a read aloud story, and they always did. And I can't force them to be bookworms and book lovers, but they can read if they need to. And we've shared a lot of good stories. So, if they end up doing, the one likes to listen to ebooks because, he can lie in his bed and just have his earphones. But there are other ways for children to enjoy stories in the digital age. So do what you can and just, see how that goes. What I'm trying to do is actually not set people up with false expectations, because Wendy and I often found that when homeschoolers start out, and we did the same thing, you hear all these ideas and you have these wonderful dreams of what the ideal homeschooling family is going to do and accomplish and how it's going to look. And often the reality doesn't turn out that way. So take everything we say as ideas and inspiration and goals and things to try and work for. But your homeschooling is going to look different to every other family. So don't beat yourself up if you don't end up with bookworms. You just share your love of stories with them. It's yeah, and on my preschool website, where is it? Let me find. I'll just share the screen quickly again. I've got a preschool website called Shirley's Preschool Activities, and there's a series of about 4 articles on reading with little ones. And on this one article, which I won't go through now, there's like more than 20 benefits of reading with children. And research has shown that reading aloud is, I'm not sharing it, am I? Share.
Yeah.
So there's the article, just showing you the website so you'll recognize it. But research has shown that reading aloud with children is one of the things that helps lay a good foundation so that they do achieve well academically when they're older. So it is an important thing to do. And as I say, whether they become readers themselves or not, who can tell? But do read to your children daily if you can. And you can, when the libraries are open, get library books. Otherwise, use what you've got in your house. For now, you'll maybe have to swap with friends and neighbors, or buy online. But do what you can to read good stories to your children all the time.
So we didn't get your screen there. I think it was I know that you work on 2 screens, so we got a different screen. But just to run back, it's Shirley's preschool activities, and there is an amazing bag of goodies on that website for you to look at and go through. And one of the things that I always refer parents to are the 2 articles there on fine and gross motor learning. We tend to want to have our children write, the alphabet and that sort of thing. And one of the things that we loved doing when the kids were small is we had a big sliding door, and I used to give them shaving foam, and they used to do their A's in the shaving foam on the window and use all of those sort of gross motor skills. The folks that have just joined, will you please put your videos off? Thank you very much. It just slows down everybody else's speed of receiving the feed. So you guys can just turn your videos off. Thank you very much. So those sort of gross motor things are fun. They're messy, and it also allows a very tactile approach to learning in the early years. So we talk about the terminology multi-sensory learning. We want our kids to have an auditory input, a visual input, and not just box them when they're little and say, all right, my child is an auditory learner because they love storybooks, or my child's only a hands-on learner because they love messy play and that sort of thing. We want to give them exposure to all forms of learning so that the whole brain is engaged. I know that you've done some research on that, Shirley. Do you want to share a bit further?
About the research on
about multi-sensory learning versus, yeah.
So we're seeing that there's a chat, and I'm distracted by the chat comment.
All right. Just Karen, if you can turn your video off, please. Go for it, Charles.
Well, I think the thing is that when we experience something and we've engaged with all the senses, then we tend to remember it better. People say we actually learn by doing. And so when you can, I don't know how to say it differently, Wendy. but yeah, when you've been somewhere and seen something and climbed in it and experienced it, it's far different than just having mom read a textbook about it. So, for example, that's one of the reasons that going on outings is such a great activity. I mean, in our Footprints program, our children learned about Bartholomew Dyers and how he traveled to the Cape on a caravel. And if you ever have the opportunity and you go to the Mossel Bay Museum Complex, they've got a life-size replica of that caravel there, which you can climb on, and you can go into the ship, and you can see what it was. And when you've read about it and you've heard all the terminology of a boat, and then you go there and you see, okay, this is the poop deck, and this is this, and this is that. I can't even remember all the parts of a boat now, but obviously didn't learn very well. Then it becomes a far more real experience for the children.
Yeah, I remember my kids going to that and standing there at the bottom and saying, look, Mom, the Lantine sails. Of all the things that they could remember, it was the Lantine sails. What I would also like to say is that one of the processes that we follow in these early years is us unlearning our own schooling, because we are all subject to schools. Some moms coming into the homeschooling movement now were homeschooled themselves, and that is just such a super blessing, because they've already been exposed to a different way of doing things. But using these years to renew your mind, to get new ideas, and not grab for something that is familiar to you. So, you know, if you look for any picture, and I was looking for them for our slideshow, which we were going to put together for you, and everything that I put preschool, it was a whole bunch of little kids sitting at desks with brightly colored pens and pencils. And that's not what homeschooling a preschooler is about. It's about teaching them to work like the Moore formula. Ramblin' Dorothy Moore wrote a book called Better Late Than Early. And a lot of parents have read that and applied the principles in their own home. And each child has a different learning order. So some kids will learn to read at 4, and others, like one of my children, learned to read correctly at 11, 12. And what the Moores talk about is a child-based or a child-led education, in terms of them reaching their milestones when they are ready, when those neural paths are starting to grow. And then you take them on an immersion trip into whatever it is. They want to learn how to read or to write or to do science, or they're really, really interested in butterflies, and you spend weeks learning about butterflies. And you source all those materials and provide them the hands-on approach to learning, the auditory approach by reading them stories about butterflies. You can take them to Butterfly World outside Paarl. You can do arts and crafts on butterflies, and your kids will be delighted in it. And that's a very different picture to kids just little ones sitting at desks coloring in a picture of a butterfly and learning that they've got a mirror image on their wings. They can actually go and see these things for themselves and experience it firsthand. And that's what the Moore formula is about. Now, you know, we look at, in the Moore formula, we look at the head, the heart, and the hand. And the academics follow when the child is ready. We've just covered that. The other function of your kids being at home is, again, not sitting at a little desk doing work, but it's for them to learn how to have a good interaction with their siblings, with their parents, with other people, grandparents, etc. And I think that is one of the biggest blessings of homeschooling all the way, even with our teens, is that they have a deep relationship within their home. So the picture that Shirley's just put up, that is the second of the pillars in the Moore formula, is learning to love others and serve others. And I think always the best place to start is with grandparents. But as the children's circle gets bigger in life, there's other people that they can serve. Perhaps your child has a deep passion for animals, and they can get involved in fostering rescue animals, or maybe they have a passion for baking and they can start doing baking classes. You know, those little circles open up, and to give them these 7 years before they start any formal schooling is a real privilege for them to have, instead of being rushed into grade R and, you know, R, double R and R and that sort of thing when they're still little tots. Do you want to add to that, Jules?
Yeah, I think the thing is just for them to realize that they are part of a family, and then they're part of a community. And as parents, we've got to help them as we raise them from the early years onwards into adulthood, to help them to understand where they fit into that community and how they can serve others. And eventually in our careers, we are serving others in our communities as well, whether it's, you know, offering accounting services or building services or whatever it is. So it's creating that idea of there's a place where you belong, and there's a, you know, and there's a plan for your life, and, you know, you've got to work it out and figure it out, of course. But yeah, it's sort of having that long-term perspective. But it ties in so nicely with the next section, which is the hand. Let me just find our little screen share thing. because learning to do work is also such a vital, important thing to learn. And that starts at home with doing chores initially. And chores are so valuable because it not only helps you as the mom, and yes, it takes sometimes quite a bit of nagging to train the children to do their chores, but what it builds in them is that I've got responsibility and other people are trusting me and relying on me to do these chores. You know, whether it's just picking up my own toys or pulling my bed straight, because I won't call it making a bed when it comes to how children make beds. My mother always wants to go and redo it and straighten everything and smooth it down nicely. But there's a time to show them how to do it properly, yes. But the point is that they're learning, I can do this and I should do this and I must do this. And it gives them some kind of a sense of self-worth and self-confidence. They always talk about how we all need a sense of belonging, worthiness, and competence. And doing chores helps children to learn that they actually are competent and they can do things and that they play a valuable role in the family. And as they get older, you're going to work yourself out of a job and they're going to do the chores that you are probably doing yourselves as parents right now.
Definitely. And I often say that I think back to one of my children in 2008, we decided to pull up a whole garden and grow vegetables. We didn't do it in half measures, so we went from having rose gardens and all sorts of things to having just vegetable beds. And my eldest son at the time built every single raised bed and fence with his dad. And in the evenings, he would fall into bed absolutely exhausted. But that was his work at the time. And when he faced some really big challenges in his teen years, I used to encourage him with the thought of, you know, when you were a little guy and you had to do that really hard thing, those chores in the home, and work alongside dad and saw things and hammer things, but you went to bed at night feeling great about yourself because you had achieved something. Well, it's the same thing with whether you're facing a page of calculus that is completely new and your brain is boggled, or whether you have to face a hard personality trait that needs to be worked on, or character trait. So I think the point is that no matter what we are doing with our children when they're little, and it's a really sweet and tender time, we mustn't forget that we are raising adults. And all the foundation that we place in our children now through the 3 disciplines of head, hand, and heart will have a long-term fruit down the line. And we really do get one chance with them when they're little. And it's a pity if we rush those years into learning phonics and maths and handwriting skills. Rather give them that freedom. Charlotte Mason says to give them a full 6 years, the better part of it spent in the outdoors, to just establish who they are as little people, for you to get all of those good character traits and habits in, because you can rather fight about a chore and, you know, teach your child how to complete a task correctly in that space than have later on in your primary and high school years moms and dads fighting with their children to get schoolwork done. That's an unpleasant environment to be in. So rather use these young years to train your kids to do the work that needs to be done, and it'll naturally translate into more peaceful times at the table when they have to do discipline work.
So let's talk quickly in the last few minutes about what materials and ways parents can now focus on the academics, because we've spent a lot of time talking about the head, hands, and heart, which I think are critical. Okay, I'll quickly just share a screenshot here of our Little Footprints manual, which we're going to use as an example. And there are other suitable programs as well, which we can also recommend. But we just believe that at this age, you spend a lot of time and effort teaching children to read and write and do maths. And so we encourage parents to wait until the children are actually showing an interest in wanting to learn those kind of things. Don't push them too early. But because it's quite mom or dad intensive, it needs a parent to supervise. You want the other subjects to actually be fun and light. And this is why we created Little Footprints, and there are also other story-based homeschool curricula that were created specifically for the homeschooling industry. They're not classroom textbooks that are now being used at home. Right, we're at the 10-minute mark. And so Wendy and I created this so that parents would have a nice range of good stories to read to their children, and they are South African stories. So we believe that we start off learning about our home, our community, our culture, our country, and then we move out sort of in concentric circles to the wider world. So that's why it's based on South African stories. And in the Mom's Manual, you get lesson ideas for each story. So this is just an example, I hope it's up on the screen, of Fly Eagle Fly, which happens to be the first story in the book. So we give you a quick summary for each story. If you want to do Bible memory verses, we've got themes that tie in with the content of the story. We learn about the sun in this book because that's one of the things that comes up in the story. You'll learn about light. You'll learn about birds of prey because it's a story about a man who finds an eagle. And so whatever topics are in each story, we give you lesson ideas in the manual, which I'm just scrolling through. And then we also look at the artwork in some of the stories because a lot of them are done very beautifully and very creatively. And we encourage the children to then learn about, watercolors or pastels or whatever medium was used to illustrate the book, and do some arts and crafts. And of course, if there's food or something like that that's relevant in the story, then we would also give you recipes and things like that. And then we also give you, sorry, I'm just switching over to the next slide. Lost my place. We give you a wall map, and Wendy, I'll let you explain how the big wall map works.
So, the wall map, people often say, well, where are the provinces? We originally designed it for the middle program, and there were no provinces at that time, 500 years ago. And then we realized that the children learn so much more by drawing in their own boundary lines and then placing the little picture disc that is related to each of the stories, where that story happened, and putting in their own rivers and their mountains. And we've had some amazing arts, works of art come out of these big wall maps. So they're A1, is that right? Yeah, A1 size. And they're on the wall for the whole time that you're studying, and every river that's mentioned, every city, every event has a place where your little picture disc goes, and you build this thing up over the time of your study. And your kids have such an amazing perspective of their country because they've been involved in the map work. It's not looking at a page with.
So the picture is provided. Sorry, the picture discs are provided at the back of the manual. So there's just a screenshot of them there. They get colored in, cut out, and you can write on the map with whiteboard markers because it's a laminated map. So it's again a little bit of the multi-sensory thing. And you'd be amazed how much they remember just by putting those little picture discs on and go to those places. Then it becomes even more relevant.
Yeah.
So this is what we call a unit study. Let me just share my screen again. So in this case, it's built around the picture books that make up the program, but it covers whatever topics, as I said, are in the story. So we look at social studies, we're learning about different people and cultural groups in South Africa. We look at the geography, we look at the plants and animals that feature in the stories. Obviously, there's language arts activities, pre-maths, I would say, sort of basic counting and sorting and those kind of skills, readiness skills, life skills, arts, crafts, cooking, some Bible lessons, which is more like Bible character training children to be kind to others, to obey their parents, to overcome fears. It's those kind of things. And then copy work is handwriting exercises for children who are ready for that kind of thing. And if you just look at the screenshot of an overview of all the different topics, you can see how broad and how rich it is compared to just, reading a textbook that isolates different topics and focuses on them one by one.
Mm. And some of those books, become part of your children's futures. We always talk about the one chap, he fell in love, in fact, with that lesson that Shirley's just told you with Birds of Prey because of Fly, Eagle, Fly. And for years, from being a little chap, talking about 9 years of age, he was volunteering at the Wild Bird Rescue in KwaZulu-Natal. And for many years, that was what he was going to pursue as a career. He wanted to be an ornithologist. He changed. He became a musician. But the fact is that this young chap can talk to professors on the topics of wild birds and wild bird rehabilitation. And it's just amazing to know that it was that the passion and the love sprung out of a storybook. And there's lots and lots of stories like that. And what the point is that to give your children a broad, generous education by exposing them to really good storybooks. And Footprints, yes, it's our baby and we love it and we're slightly biased. But as Shirley said at the beginning, there are other literature-based programs that do the same thing. But, and it takes learning from a dimension of a kid sitting at a desk, doing what every other child is doing, and giving them that true home education, which is why you're here this evening wanting to find out more. So I have a few minutes left. Jules, there you go first.
I was just going to say, instead of sitting at a desk, you're cuddling up on a couch or even sitting in bed under the blankets, reading stories together. And children love stories. So that means they're going to just love learning. And then it's not going to be this mom nagging kids to do schoolwork as much as if you were doing a different method. And we've had so many families just say, if you're not learning about your own country and reading stories and doing footprints, your children are missing out. That's what some of them So there's a little sales pitch. But really it doesn't have to be footprints. Just reading stories to your children is giving them the world through an armchair journey. And then we encourage you to also go out into the world and give them that whole living experience. So, it's just a powerful way to make children fall in love with learning in a painless way. And as a mom, you get to learn in a different way than what you were taught. And that's one of the best parts of homeschooling.
Yeah, get out.
I'm not excluding the men, but most of the parents, it's the mom physically working with the kids all day long. So.
Okay, so we've got 2 minutes left. What I suggest, instead of trying to cram in some questions now, everybody, if you'd like to log out and log back in, and then Shirley and I will be here for the next sort of 15, 20 minutes. Is that okay? And we can handle any queries. So if you don't have questions, then it was lovely having you with us. If you do, we'll see you back here in about 5 minutes.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.